What if I told you the most revolutionary book in history almost never saw the light of day? A manuscript locked in a drawer for over 20 years, written by a man who feared it could destroy him, and maybe society itself. When it finally came out, it shattered Victorian ideals, sparked fiery debates, and made its author whisper on his deathbed, "What have I done?" This isn't a story about war or power. It's about a theory so daring that even today it stirs controversy in classrooms, courtrooms, and beyond. When Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, it wasn't just a scientific bombshell, it was a cultural earthquake. Victorian England, deeply rooted in faith, saw humanity as divine and distinct from animals. Darwin's theory? It said otherwise. Natural selection proposed that species, including humans, evolve over time through a brutal process of survival and adaptation. To many, this wasn't just science, it was heresy. The press called it dangerous. Religious leaders claimed it undermined morality. Darwin himself avoided public confrontations, letting his ideas take the heat. The backlash came to a head in 1860 at Oxford. On one side, Bishop Samuel Wilberforce, a gifted speaker who ridiculed Darwin's ideas. On the other, Thomas Huxley, nicknamed Darwin's bulldog, who wasn't afraid to fight back. Wilberforce famously mocked Huxley, asking if he claimed apes as his ancestors. Huxley's retort, that he'd rather have an ape for an ancestor than a man who misuses his intellect to obscure the truth. The crowd erupted. This wasn't just about science, it was a battle for the soul of society. Despite the resistance, Darwin's ideas slowly gained traction. Over time, evidence piled up. Fossils revealing transitional species, the discovery of DNA, and breakthroughs like feathered dinosaur fossils linking birds to reptiles. Evolution became the cornerstone of modern biology, explaining how life adapts and thrives. But here's the thing, Darwin's theory isn't perfect. Even in his time, he admitted there were gaps. Modern critics have pointed out significant flaws in Darwin's explanation. The Cambrian explosion, a period when life on Earth suddenly diversified, seems to defy the slow, gradual evolution Darwin described. How did so many complex organisms appear in such a short span? Then there's the human eye. Darwin himself called it absurd to think such a complex structure evolved through small changes. And what about consciousness, morality, and altruism? How does natural selection explain self-sacrifice or the ability to create art? These aren't just philosophical questions. Some scientists argue Darwin's theory, while groundbreaking, doesn't fully explain the complexity of life. Modern evolutionary science has had to build on, and in some cases, revise his ideas. Today, Darwin's theory is widely accepted in science, but it's far from uncontested. In some regions, debates rage over teaching evolution versus creationism. And even in scientific circles, researchers grapple with questions Darwin couldn't have imagined, from genetic engineering to the origins of consciousness. Yet, despite its flaws, On the Origin of Species remains one of the most influential books ever written. It wasn't just about explaining life, it was about questioning everything. Here's why Darwin's legacy endures. It's not because he had all the answers. It's because he dared to ask the questions. His theory wasn't perfect, it wasn't meant to be, but it laid the foundation for generations of scientists to build on, challenge, and refine. So, is Darwin's theory of evolution right? In some ways, yes. In others, the jury's still out. But the beauty of science and life is that the questions never really end. Darwin didn't give us the final word on evolution. He gave us a conversation that's still unfolding 165 years later. What do you think? Is evolution the whole story or just the beginning?